Cade Mercer realized he'd walked into the wrong kind of war the second he saw his daughter's artwork on the principal's desk. The drawing was crumpled, edges torn like it had been rescued from a trash can. A little girl with braids and big eyes stood in blue crayon beside a taller woman with a yellow scarf and sky-colored earrings. Between them, a thick red line cut down the page, jagged and messy, like a lightning strike. "Mr. Mercer," Principal Holcomb said, pushing the drawing forward with two manicured fingers as if it might stain her. "Do you know what this is supposed to represent?" Cade didn't answer right away. The office smelled like burned coffee and citrus cleaner, and the upholstered chair under him squeaked whenever he shifted. Outside the window, the elementary school's playground sat empty, swings swaying in the winter wind. He hadn't been called in for a meeting like this since Sadie was in kindergarten and bit a boy who took her crayons. She was 9 now. 9 felt too old for trouble and way too young for whatever this was. He recognized the woman in the drawing before he admitted it to himself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The scarf, the earrings, the gentle tilt of the drawn shoulders, it was all Talia Reyes, Sadie's art teacher. "Looks like two people standing in the rain," Cade said carefully, because offering truth to someone who already had a narrative loaded was like handing over a loaded gun. "One of them is my kid." Holcomb's mouth tightened. In another life, she might have been a news anchor, smooth blonde bob, flawless foundation, a voice calibrated to soothe before it cut. "Your daughter says this is Miss Reyes and herself. And this red line," she tapped the crayon lightning bolt with a clack of her nail, "is what the kids are saying about them." Her words, not mine. Across the office, the counselor shifted in her seat. "Cade," she started gently, "we're a little concerned about the intensity of Sadie's attachment to her teacher. And the way other students have begun talking about it." There it was. The front edge of the storm. Cade dragged a hand over his jaw, feeling the rasp of stubble, gypsum dust from the morning's drywall job still caught in the seams of his knuckles. He'd gone straight from a renovation site to the school, his work boots leaving faint chalk prints on the principal's polished floor. He could practically hear his late wife's voice in the back of his head. "You couldn't even stop to wash up? At least pretend you're a grown-up." But Jenna wasn't here anymore to scold him into presentable. It was just him and Sadie in the constant sense that he was one step behind whatever crisis waited around the corner. "Other students," he repeated. "You mean the kids picking on her?" The counselor, Maya Collins, according to the nameplate on the desk beside Holcomb's, folded her hands. "There have been comments about how much time Sadie spends in the art room. About how she sits next to Miss Reyes in assemblies, or volunteers to help her clean up after class. Kids can be cruel when they don't understand something. They don't understand a kid who lost her mom," Cade said, sharper than he meant to. "They don't understand how sometimes art is the only thing that makes the noise in her head quiet down." A beat of silence followed. Holcomb broke it with a small sigh. "We're not questioning Miss Reyes's intentions," she said, and her tone told him she absolutely was. "But in this climate, we have to be careful. Boundaries must be crystal clear. Multiple parents have reached out with concerns." "Concerns about what, exactly?" Cade asked. His voice stayed low. It always did when he was this close to losing his temper. Yelling was too easy. Quiet required effort. The principal's gaze flicked to the closed door, then back. "About impropriety." Maya winced. Cade stared at them both, then down at the drawing again. The red line on the paper vibrated in his vision, pulsing. "Impropriety. Someone thinks my daughter's teacher is doing something wrong because she cares about her," he asked slowly. "Because Sadie likes art class and stays after to help wash brushes?" He remembered the first time Sadie had come home buzzing about Miss Reyes. "A new art teacher, Dad. She doesn't make us copy stuff, she lets us draw what we feel." Cade hadn't known what to do with that sentence. He was a man who fixed broken cabinets and replaced cracked plaster. He understood things you could measure. Feelings belonged to another universe. "Cade, Maya said, leaning forward. Her eyes were warm in a way Holcomb's never were. Nobody is accusing anyone of anything yet. But rumors are starting, and we need to be proactive. There was a photo shared in a group chat. We're looking into it. The floor seemed to tilt under him. A photo, he repeated. Of what? Of Sadie. Holcomb's voice lowered a full octave, as if the walls themselves might be listening. And Miss Reyes. Alone in her classroom after hours. Miss Reyes is hugging her from behind at her desk. It was taken through the window in the hallway door. Cade's chest went cold and hot at the same time, like someone had packed snow between his ribs and then set it on fire. Who took it? That's what we're trying to find out, Maya said. We think one of the 5th grade boys. It was sent to another, and from there it got shared. Holcomb cleared her throat. You understand how that looks, Mr. Mercer. An adult alone with a child, physical contact, after supervised hours. In the current environment, we cannot ignore how this could be perceived. He did understand how it looked, out of context. Stripped of sound and story. He also knew what Sadie looked like when the nightmares got bad, when she woke up calling for a mother who would never answer. She'd clung to Cade the same way since she was 2. Clung to anyone safe enough to anchor her. Sadie was crying, he said, because it felt like a fact he could lean on. She told me about that day. She had a panic attack because the fire alarm went off during lunch. She said Miss Reyes sat with her until she could breathe again. Maya nodded. That aligns with what Miss Reyes reported. So an adult comforted a child, Cade said, and now you're sitting here wondering if she's a predator. The word hung in the air like smoke. Holcomb's expression hardened. No one used that word, Mr. Mercer. You didn't have to, he shot back. Maya lifted a hand. We're trying to protect everyone involved. That includes Sadie and Miss Reyes. But we can't pretend this isn't a serious situation. The district has already been burned by scandal once, long before you moved here. They err on the side of overreaction. Cade forced himself to inhale slowly. The drywall dust in his lungs scratched the inside of his throat. He wanted to rip the drawing in half, to hurl it back across the desk and demand they look at Sadie instead of a distorted snapshot. Has anyone talked to my daughter? He asked. Or are we all just speculating over crayon evidence in a grainy photo? Maya nodded. I spoke with her this morning. She was very clear, she feels safe with Miss Reyes. She sees her as a safe adult, again, her phrase. She also mentioned kids saying ugly things about her and Miss Reyes. Ugly like what? Maya's mouth flattened. We don't repeat student gossip. But you can probably guess, given the age and the internet. Oh, he could guess. He'd worked long enough in other people's homes to hear how parents talked when they thought the guy installing their cabinets wasn't really listening. The way any woman who showed warmth was suspect, how a hug, a hand on a shoulder, became evidence in the court of public opinion the minute someone decided to weaponize it. Holcomb clasped her hands atop the desk, framing the drawing. Here's what's going to happen. We are placing Miss Reyes on temporary administrative leave while the district investigates. That is standard. During that time, Sadie will be reassigned to a different teacher for her art elective, and she. No, the word came out before Cade could temper it. It wasn't loud, but it landed like a dropped wrench. The principal blinked. I'm sorry. No, he repeated. You're not ripping her away from the one place in this building that makes her feel like she can breathe. Holcomb's smile turned thin. With respect, Mr. Mercer, you don't have that authority. With respect, you don't have the right to imply something is wrong between my 9-year-old and her teacher because a bunch of kids with iPhones and dirty minds decided to stir up drama, he said. You want to investigate? Fine. Do it. Talk to everyone. But don't punish my kid in the meantime. Maya spoke softly. Cade, maybe we can find a compromise. Perhaps Sadie could still access the art room in a group setting with another adult present. She already thinks everything disappears if she loves it too much, he said, more to himself than to them. Jenna, the house, the dog they'd had to rehome when money got tight. I'm not letting you add one more thing to that list because you're scared of Facebook comments. Holcomb's lips parted. That struck home. He saw it. Mr. Mercer, she said finally, I understand this is emotional for you. But the district has guidelines. If we don't follow them, we open ourselves up to liability. Liability. He knew that word. Knew how it made people behave. In his line of work, liability meant insurance paperwork and formal statements and everyone trying to cover their own back. It rarely meant what was actually right. When is this leave supposed to start? He asked. Effective immediately, Holcomb said. Miss Reyes was informed 10 minutes ago. He felt something in his chest drop. Sadie would be in her third period math class by now, chewing the end of her pencil, the way she did when her brain outran her hand. She had no idea that someone had just quietly cut out one of the pillars holding her little world upright. And the parents? Kate asked. Do they know? The district will send a general notice about staffing changes, Holcomb said. We are not required to share details of a personnel matter. But the kids already know, he said. They have a photo and a story, and you think a vague email is going to compete with that? No one answered. He stood up, the chair squeaking in protest. This isn't you protecting my daughter, he said. This is you protecting yourselves. Kate, Maya said, rising too. Please. Let us handle this. You going rogue is only going to inflame things. He almost laughed at that. As if he were plotting vigilante justice instead of figuring out how to pick up his kid from school without shattering her. I'm going to take Sadie home, he said. You can call me when the district remembers it's dealing with humans, not headlines. He walked out before they could stop him. The hallway outside the office hummed with the muted noise of a school day, distant laughter, intercom crackles, the rattle of a rolling cart loaded with library books. Kate moved through it on autopilot, boots soft on the scuffed tile, breath shallow. He'd patched this very hallway last summer, replacing chipped drywall and repainting the lower half of the walls in a fresh, forgiving gray-blue. He'd listened to teachers talk during in-service days, their conversations drifting through open doors. He'd heard Talia's laugh for the first time on a break like that. He spotted her now near the end of the hall. She stood outside her classroom, a cardboard box in her arms, the bright print of her scarf muted today but still unmistakable. Kids loved that scarf, Sadie said it was like a piece of a sunset wrapped around her teacher's neck. Now it looked more like a target. Talia's dark hair was twisted into a low bun, curls escaping around her temples. Her usually animated face was pale beneath her olive skin, jaw tight. Two laminated posters leaned against the wall beside her door, art is for everyone and feelings belong on paper, too. Kate's stomach twisted. She looked up as he approached. For a second, he saw relief flicker over her features. Then caution settled in. Kate, she said, adjusting the box against her hip. I guess they called you in. Yeah, he said. His voice came out rough. They did. Her gaze flicked past him toward the office, then back. I'm supposed to clear out personal items today. They said it's temporary, but, she gave a small, brittle laugh that didn't sound like her. The last district that said temporary meant don't come back. He swallowed. They told me about the photo. A muscle jumped in her cheek. Of course they did. I'm guessing they didn't mention the part where my kid had a full-blown panic attack and you kept her from passing out, he added. Talia's grip tightened around the box. Sadie was shaking so hard I thought she'd throw up. The alarm, the noise, the lights, it was overload. I filed an incident report, emailed the counselor, copied the principal. But it turns out one blurry picture taken through a door window counts for more than a stack of paperwork. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as a group of fourth graders clattered past, buzzing about lunch. They threw Talia quick glances, the way kids looked at something adults had branded as trouble but hadn't explained. Are you okay? He asked, because no one had asked him that question after Jenna died, not once in a way that didn't feel like a formality. He knew the shape of that pit. Knew how quickly it opened under your feet when the world decided you were something to be managed instead of someone to be heard. She blinked, like the question surprised her. I will be, she said. Right now, I'm mostly angry. And scared. Not for me. For Sadie. He nodded. The anger in him recognized itself in hers. What are they saying? She asked quietly. Outside that office. In the parking lot. On the parent pages. He exhaled. I haven't checked yet. A corner of her mouth twitched. Liar. He gave her that. I saw a post this morning in the East Ridge Parents Group. Something about questions parents deserve answers to and protecting our children from inappropriate relationships. No names, but anyone with a brain and a kid in 4th grade could connect the dots. She closed her eyes briefly. Of course. Talia, he said, and the first time he used her first name in the hallway surprised them both. I told them in there my kid feels safe with you. That the only unsafe thing here is a rumor mill with a Wi-Fi connection. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze straight on. There it was again, that steadiness Sadie talked about. Like Miss Reyes had steel under all that softness. And what did they say? She asked. That they have guidelines. Liability. Words like that. Her shoulders slumped a fraction. Liability. Right. He wanted to take the box from her, to lighten the load even in a symbolic way. Instead, he shoved his hands in his pockets. I'm pulling Sadie out for the day, he said. She doesn't need to sit through math while gossip spreads. We'll go get ice cream or something. Try to explain this without breaking her. Guilt flashed across Talia's face. I'm so sorry she's caught in the middle of this. That you are. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. You hugged a crying kid. If that's a crime now, they can lock me up next for letting her fall asleep on my chest watching cartoons. Her lips twitched. Don't say that too loud. Someone will quote it out of context. A bell rang overhead, signaling the end of the period. Doors opened up and down the hall. Kids poured out, shrieks and footsteps echoing. Somewhere in the tide of bodies, Cade saw a familiar head of dark hair woven into a messy braid. Sadie spotted them almost instantly. Dad, she said, slipping between taller kids until she stood in front of him, backpack slightly unzipped, a corner of a sketchbook poking out. Her brown eyes were wary. Did I do something? Cade crouched to her level. That simple motion sent a fine dust of drywall from his jeans to the floor. He put a hand on her shoulder. No, Bug, he said. You didn't do anything wrong. Her gaze darted to Talia. Is it about the picture? Even the way she said it, small, careful, made his throat ache. What picture? He asked, because he wanted to hear how she'd heard it. Some kids were passing a phone around at lunch, Sadie said. Her voice dropped. It was me and Miss Reyes in the art room. When the alarm went off and I freaked out. They said, her mouth pressed into a thin line. They said it looked like something gross. Cade heard Talia's inhale behind him. He kept his eyes on his daughter. And what do you think? He asked. Sadie didn't hesitate. I think they're stupid, she said, fierce in a way that reminded him so much of Jenna had hurt. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't stop shaking. Miss Reyes was just helping me feel like I had bones again and not just jelly. He nodded. That's what I think, too. So why is she holding a box? Sadie's gaze flicked to Talia's arms, to the posters now leaning more crookedly against the wall. Talia stepped closer, lowering herself so she was almost eye level with Sadie. The box shifted, a mug with tiny paintbrushes clinked inside. Hey, mi estrella, she said softly. The grown-ups are sorting some stuff out. So I'm going to be away from school for a little while. Sadie's eyes widened, filling with fast tears. Because of the picture? Because some people saw the picture and forgot to ask what was happening on the inside of it, Talia said. Her voice stayed calm, but Cade saw the muscle in her jaw twitch again. They're scared of how it looks instead of listening to how you feel. That's not your fault. Or mine. Sadie's chin wobbled. Did I get you in trouble? She whispered. No, Talia said firmly. She set the box down with a soft thud, freeing her hands. Look at me. Sadie did. You did nothing wrong, Talia said. You had a hard moment. You asked for help. That's what brave people do. None of this changes that. Tears spilled over Sadie's lashes. She lunged forward, wrapping her arms around Talia's neck. Talia hugged her back, one hand cradling the back of her head. Cade felt the air around them crackle, like the moment right before a storm breaks. He glanced up and saw a cluster of parents at the far end of the hall, late drop-offs and early pickups. Their eyes were on the hug. One of them, tall, expensive coat, phone already in hand, raised her camera. Hey, Cade snapped, straightening. Don't. Her eyelids flickered in innocent surprise. I'm just documenting what's going on. For the board. Document your own kid, he said. Leave mine out of your witch hunt. Her mouth curled. If everything is so innocent, why are you worried about a little transparency, Mr. Mercer, he supplied. Cade Mercer. And I'm worried because you're not interested in transparency. You're interested in a story that makes you feel righteous when you repost it. Her eyes flashed, the way people's eyes did when they'd been hit squarely in the ego. Talia eased back from the hug, brushing a tear from Sadie's cheek with her thumb. She rose slowly, putting herself subtly between Sadie and the cluster of gawking parents. Miss Hanlon, she said to the woman with the phone. This isn't an appropriate time or place. Appropriate? Brielle Hanlon, because that's who the woman was, Cade realized, the admin of 3 different local Facebook groups and self-appointed guardian of community standards, gave a short laugh. Like being alone in a classroom with a little girl pressed up against you isn't inappropriate? Sadie flinched. Cade saw red. You don't talk about my daughter like that, he said, stepping forward. Oh, I'm sorry, Brielle said, throwing up one hand, the other still clutching her phone. Are we not allowed to say the quiet part out loud? Maybe if the school had higher standards for who they hired, parents wouldn't have to do their own policing. Talia is one of the best teachers in this building, Cade said, the words leaving no room for argument. Ask any kid who's had her. Mr. Mercer, Holcomb's voice snapped from behind them. That's enough. He hadn't heard her step out of the office. Now she stood with arms folded, eyes cool, a few other staff members hovering in the doorway behind her. Enough is you letting this circus happen in your hallway, he said. Enough is you letting parents smear a teacher because they're scared of a picture with no context. Brielle huffed. We're scared because this district has been burned before. Or have you forgotten the coach from 2 years ago? I moved here last spring, Cade said. I don't know anything about your coach. I just know my kid had a panic attack and the one adult who helped her is being treated like a threat. Mr. Mercer, Holcomb repeated, sharper. We will not resolve this in the hallway. Please collect your daughter and allow us to follow proper procedures. Cade looked at Sadie, whose face had gone blotchy from crying. He looked at Talia, hands still steady on his daughter's shoulders. He looked at Brielle, phone raised, eyes bright with the kind of excitement that came from a disaster you got to experience at a safe distance. He thought about the word impropriety. About how quickly it attached itself to women like Talia, women who were warm, present, unwilling to perform a safe kind of distance when kids broke down in front of them. He thought about Jenna, about all the ways she'd been mislabeled before someone finally called what she was living through by its true name. He took a breath that tasted like dust and anger. Come on, Bug, he said to Sadie. We're going to sign you out. Sadie clung to Talia's hand until the last possible second. Will you be back? She whispered. Talia swallowed. I'm going to do everything I can to be, she said. And your dad is going to ask hard questions. He's good at that. Promise? I'm my favorite paintbrush. Sadie gave a crooked, watery smile, then let go. As Cade led her down the hall, he felt Talia's gaze on his back like a hand between his shoulder blades. Not pushing. Just reminding him he had a spine. By the time they drove out of the school parking lot, the East Ridge Parents Group had exploded. Cade kept his phone face down on the passenger seat for the first 3 stoplights. Sadie stared out her window, feet kicking the glove compartment rhythmically. "Can we get ice cream even though it's cold?" she asked finally. He glanced at her. "Is that a legal requirement for pulling you out of school?" She shrugged. "Feels like it." "Then yeah," he said. "Ice cream it is." He pulled into the small strip mall 2 miles from school where a laundromat, a nail salon, and an ice cream place lived in a weary row. Inside, the air smelled like sugar and waffle cones, the cheerful chalkboard menu at odds with the knot in his chest. Sadie chose mint chocolate chip. Cade got coffee ice cream, because he hadn't had time to grab an actual coffee and his brain was starting to feel like wet cardboard. They sat in a corner booth by the window. Outside, winter light washed everything in gray. "So," he said, watching her swirl a melting puddle of green on her napkin with a spoon. "Want to tell me about the picture from your own point of view?" Sadie rolled her spoon between her fingers. "The fire alarm went off," she said without prompting. "It was loud. I know they test it sometimes, but this one wasn't a test. Someone burned something in the cafeteria. Mrs. Duncan said so later. But when it first started, everyone freaked out. People were shoving to get to the door and I couldn't see, and then it was like my skin turned inside out." Her voice went flat, distant. Cade's hand tightened around his cone. "I couldn't move," she continued. "My legs wouldn't listen. I tried to plug my ears but that made it worse. And then Miss Reyes was just there. She knelt in front of me and said to look at her nose and count the freckles and breathe with her. She smelled like paint and gum. I counted to 10 and backed down and then I could move again." She swallowed. "She took me to her room during lunch," Sadie said. "She turned off the lights and let me sit under the table while she graded. She said sometimes small spaces feel safer. She let me draw the fire alarm with silly eyes. I was still kind of shaking so she sat behind me and wrapped her arms around me like a seatbelt." Cade could see it, his kid's small back pressed against Talia's chest, pencil moving over paper while the world narrowed to breath and warmth. She asked if it was okay first, Sadie added quickly. She said, "Can I hold you for a few minutes?" "You can say no." I said yes. "Good," he said. His throat hurt. "I didn't know anyone took a picture," she whispered. "I just thought, it was just us." Then at recess, Mason shoved his phone in my face and said I was Miss Reyes's little girlfriend. Everyone laughed. I tried to grab his phone and he pulled it away and said he'd post it in the group chat so everyone could see how gross we were. "What did you do?" Cade asked. "I told him he was a worm with hair," Sadie muttered. Then I kicked his shin and Mr. Wallace made me sit on the wall for the rest of recess. A corner of Cade's mouth twitched despite everything. "Good form?" "Perfect form," she said, with the faintest hint of pride. He reached across the table and covered her sticky hand with his. "Sadie," he said, "none of this is your fault. Not the picture, not the rumors, not the grown-ups acting like cowards. Okay?" She looked up at him, searching his face like it was a test she hoped to pass. "If they're cowards," she said slowly, "are you going to be one too?" The question landed harder than any accusation. That was the thing about kids, they didn't always know how to be gentle with the truth. But they knew how to aim it. He thought of all the times in the last 2 years he'd chosen quiet over confrontation. When Jenna's parents had hinted that maybe he hadn't tried hard enough to keep her sober. When the insurance adjuster had stonewalled his claim after the hospital bills. When their old landlord had kept their deposit and made him feel like fighting would prove every stereotype about guys with tattoos and work trucks. He squeezed her hand. "I'm going to talk," he said. Loudly. "I don't know if that fixes anything. But I'm not letting them rewrite what happened in that classroom." She nodded once, as if that answer filed something important in her mind. Can I still draw? She asked. He frowned. Of course. Why would you not? Sometimes when things get taken away, I think maybe I'm not allowed to do the thing attached to them anymore, she said. Like when we moved and you said we couldn't keep Max because the apartment was too small, I thought maybe we weren't allowed to go to dog parks either because that was a dog thing and we didn't have a dog. He swallowed hard. You can always draw, he said. If someone tries to take that, I'll put a hole in their drywall. She snorted, a wet laugh. You do that for money anyway. Yeah, but this time I'll do it with extra attitude. Her smile faded as quickly as it appeared. Are they going to fire her? She whispered. I don't know yet, he said honestly. But I'm going to do everything I can to stop them. How? He looked down at his melting ice cream, the napkins soaked beneath it. At his hands, calloused and cracked from years of manual labor, not law school or public relations. I don't know yet, he repeated. But I know where the microphones are. He didn't intend to check the parent group until later. After he dropped Sadie at home with strict instructions not to answer the door for anyone but him, he headed to his toolbox in the bedroom closet. Old habits, he guessed. When something needed fixing, he reached for tools. Except this time he bypassed the hammer and pliers and grabbed the scuffed notebook shoved between screw boxes instead. The notebook was filled with estimates and sketches, lists of materials for jobs he couldn't afford to screw up. On the last few pages were notes he'd scribbled when Jenna was in rehab, questions he'd wanted to ask the counselors, phrases like enabling and codependency spelled wrong, circled, underlined. He flipped to a blank page and wrote at the top, things I know are true. 1. Sadie had a panic attack. 2. Talia helped her. 3. Someone took a picture without permission. 4. That someone shared it to hurt. 5. Grown-ups are using fear words without asking my kid how she feels. He stared at the list until the words blurred. Then he added a sixth line. 6. Silence never helped Jenna. It won't help now. Only after that did he pick up his phone. The East Ridge Parents Group had 3,472 members. When Cade and Sadie had moved to this town, he'd joined hoping for tips on good pediatric dentists and cheap soccer cleats. What he'd found was a digital town square where minor issues became moral panics in 10 comments or less. He scrolled past posts about lost lunch boxes and carpool swaps until he found it. A post from Brielle Hanlon, time-stamped an hour earlier. Parents deserve transparency. Today, a concerning incident involving a staff member and a student came to my attention. While I cannot share the photo here for legal reasons, face with rolling eyes, I urge all parents to demand answers from the administration about staff conduct and after-hours supervision. Our children's safety must always come first. Below, a cascade of comments. I heard about this. So disgusting if true. Isn't this that new art teacher? She seemed intense. If the district hides this, we should go to the news. Didn't we learn our lesson with Coach Miller? Praying for the child involved. Broken heart. Cade's jaw clenched. He clicked the little box that said write a comment. Then he sat there, thumbs hovering, every half-formed sentence feeling either too small or nuclear. He backed out and opened a private message to Talia instead. Cade, hey. It's me. Are you okay if I say something in the group? Not about details. Just, push back. He watched the typing bubble appear and disappear twice before a reply came. Talia, you don't have to set yourself on fire for me. He snorted. That sounded like a line she'd used before on someone else. Cade, too late. Drywall dust is flammable. Another pause. Talia, if you speak, they'll come for you too. Cade looked at line 6 in his notebook. Cade, they can try. But they don't have a picture of me doing my job. This time, the bubble appeared and stayed. Talia, say whatever you need to say. I trust your aim. Trust. A ridiculous, undeserved word for a guy whose main claim to heroism was once rescuing a raccoon from a chimney. He went back to the group and started typing. Cade, hey, everyone. I'm the dad of the child involved. Since people are hinting without saying things, let me be clear about what happened. He paused, fingers hovering over the send button. His heart pounded harder than it had when he'd rushed into burning garages on renovation sites. He kept going. Cade, my daughter had a panic attack when the fire alarm went off. The art teacher helped her calm down. She asked consent before she touched her. She reported the incident to the school. They are now investigating because someone took a photo out of context and shared it without permission. There was nothing inappropriate. My daughter feels safe with this teacher. What she does not feel safe with is kids weaponizing photos and adults jumping to worst-case conclusions without asking her what happened. He read it twice, looking for holes, for anything that could be twisted. Then he added one more line. Cade, if you're genuinely worried about kids' safety, maybe start by teaching yours not to take and share secret photos of their classmates. He hit post before he could lose his nerve. Within seconds, the notification bell lit up. Thank you for sharing, Cade. But how can we be sure that's all that happened? Of course the dad is defending her. Face with rolling eyes. Honestly, this sounds like boundary crossing to me. Why was she alone with your daughter? He answered some of them. Ignored others. The more he typed, the more he realized the conversation had never been about information. It was about fear and control. About who got to define what safety looked like. 10 minutes later, a new post appeared. Admin announcement, comments about unnamed staff members will be turned off until further notice to protect the group from legal issues. Please direct concerns to the district instead. So they were muzzled there. Fine. His phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number, Mr. Mercer, this is Superintendent Blake. I'd appreciate the chance to speak with you before tonight's board meeting. He stared at the screen. He hadn't known there was a board meeting scheduled. Cade, there's a board meeting? Superintendent, emergency session. 7 p.m. auditorium. Public comment period included. Public comment. Microphones. His stomach swooped. He thought of Sadie's question, are you going to be a coward too? He typed back. Cade, I'll be there. The auditorium smelled like old carpet and nerves. By 6:30, the parking lot outside East Ridge Elementary looked like a football game. Cars lined the street, bumpers kissing, hazard lights flashing as people darted across in clumps. The winter air bit Cade's cheeks as he and Sadie walked toward the glass doors, her small hand tucked in his. You don't have to come in, he told her quietly. You can stay home with Mrs. Patel if you want. Their neighbor had offered to watch Sadie, cheeks tight with the unspoken understanding of what a night like this could turn into. Sadie shook her head. If they're going to talk about me, I want to hear it, she said. Plus, you always say grown-up stuff counts more when kids are watching. He almost smiled. He had said that, usually about recycling and street crossing. Inside, the lobby buzzed. Parents, teachers, and community members clustered in knots, voices low and urgent. A table near the entrance held a neat stack of agendas and a sign-up sheet for public comment. Cade guided Sadie to one of the last remaining seats near the middle. The stage at the front of the auditorium was set with a long table and microphones, the district's logo projected on the screen behind it like a calm, neutral eye. Stay close, he murmured. She nodded, clutching her sketchbook to her chest like a shield. He spotted Talia at the side of the room, near the exit doors. She wore a plain black sweater instead of her usual splash of color, hair down around her shoulders. Beside her stood Maya, the counselor, expression pinched but determined. Their eyes met. Talia gave the tiniest of nods. Are you okay? It asked. He nodded back. No. But I'm here. The board members filed onto the stage one by one, all blazers and practiced expressions. Last came Superintendent Blake, tall, silver-haired, wearing exhaustion like an extra layer of clothing. "Good evening," the board president began, tapping the microphone. "We are here tonight to address recent concerns regarding staff conduct and student safety. We understand emotions are running high. We ask that everyone remain respectful and follow procedure." Procedure. Cade's jaw tightened. The president droned on about guidelines and investigations, about privacy laws and protecting all parties. The words rolled over the crowd like static. People shifted in their seats, glancing at their phones. "And now," the president concluded, "we will open the floor to public comment. Please line up at the side aisle if you wish to speak. You will have 2 minutes. Remember, you may not name specific staff or students." A murmur swept through the room. Chairs squeaked. Bodies stood. Brielle was already on her feet, stilettos clicking as she made her way to the aisle. 3 other parents slipped in behind her, like ducklings after a very self-satisfied mother duck. Cade felt his own legs moving before his brain caught up. "Stay here," he told Sadie. "I'll be right there." She grabbed his sleeve. "Don't let them say she's gross," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "I'll try." The line at the microphone grew. Brielle stood at the front, papers in hand, expression carefully arranged into concern. First, she began when it was her turn, voice carrying clearly through the amplifier, "I want to say I love our school. I love our teachers. But as a mother, I cannot stay silent when I see patterns that frighten me." She spoke in insinuations, in what-ifs and I-hears. She referenced prior incidents in this district and a culture of secrecy and teachers who blur boundaries in the name of being relatable. Nearly every sentence ended with a question mark, giving her plausible deniability and absolute impact. "Is it appropriate," she asked, "for staff to be alone with students behind closed doors? For them to initiate physical contact, even under the guise of comfort? In an era when abuse is everywhere, shouldn't we err on the side of caution?" I'm not naming names, a lie everyone in the room heard, but we all know a situation is being glossed over right now. I urge this board to act before we are down another Coach Miller road. Applause broke out from one side of the room. Cade recognized some of the loudest clappers from profile pictures. 2 more parents followed, echoing Brielle's sentiments in softer tones. One spoke about trust. Another about worrying stories from her daughter that might as well have been about anyone. Cade's pulse pounded in his ears. He could feel Talia's presence behind him now, somewhere near the back. He didn't have to turn to know her shoulders were set, chin up. Finally, his turn at the microphone came. When he stepped forward, the board president glanced at the sign-up sheet. "Mr. Mercer," she read. "You have 2 minutes." Cade adjusted the microphone. His hand shook once, then steadied. "Hi," he said. His voice echoed back at him from the speakers, slightly delayed. "I'm Cade Mercer. My daughter is the kid in the picture everyone's pretending not to talk about." A ripple went through the audience. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. "I'm not here because I like public speaking," he continued. "Or because I enjoy having my family's business dragged through a Facebook circus. I'm here because my daughter came home today asking if she got her favorite teacher in trouble by having a panic attack." He let that sit for a second. "Here's what happened," he said. The fire alarm went off. "My kid shut down. The art teacher, who, by the way, is the only adult in this building my daughter willingly talks to about her mom's death, got on the floor with her and helped her breathe again. Later, when things had quieted down, she let Sadie sit in her classroom to regroup. She asked for Sadie's permission before she put her arms around her. She reported all of this to the proper channels. Somewhere in there, another child took a picture through a window and decided to make it dirty." He scanned the room. Faces blurred and sharpened under the stage lights. "If you want to talk about safety," he said, "talk about that. About why a 4th grader already knows how to weaponize a moment of vulnerability. About why parents would rather believe a teacher is a monster than believe their kid did something cruel." The president's hand hovered near the timer button. "Mr. Mercer, we My time, right? He said without looking at her. Tension crackled. I get that you have to investigate, he said, eyes on the board now. Policies, liability. You don't want to get sued. I understand. What I don't understand is why administrative leave has to mean treating a teacher like a pariah before you even talk to the kid she supposedly harmed. He thought of Sadie's drawing on the principal's desk. The red crayon line. My daughter drew herself and her teacher with a red line between them and said, "This is what the kids are saying," he said. That line didn't come from anything inappropriate happening in a classroom. It came from a rumor we fed by staying quiet. He leaned slightly closer to the microphone. I'm asking you, he said simply, to remember that there are real human beings on the other side of whatever headline you're afraid of. My 9-year-old. Her teacher. Maybe talk to them before you let fear decide who gets thrown under the bus. He stepped back. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then, somewhere in the middle rows, someone clapped once, sharply. It might have been Mrs. Patel. Or Maya. The sound cracked the stillness. A few others joined. Then more. The applause stayed scattered, hesitant, but it was there. Brielle's lips thinned. The board president tapped the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Mercer, she said, tone measured. We appreciate your perspective. He walked back to his seat, chest thudding. Sadie's eyes were huge. You sounded like a TV lawyer, she whispered, awe and relief mixing. Pretty sure actual lawyers don't say which hunt into the record, he muttered. The president called the next name. Ms. Reyes. The air tightened. Cade twisted in his seat as Talia walked down the aisle. The room seemed to narrow around her. She looked small next to the microphone, but her voice carried steady. I'm not sure I'm supposed to speak, she began. Since I'm technically the subject of the investigation we're all politely not naming. A faint, nervous chuckle rippled from a few corners. But since you're discussing my career and my character in front of my students and their parents, I'd rather use my own words than let a screenshot do it for me, she said. She told them about trauma-informed teaching. About kids whose bodies remembered things their minds couldn't articulate. About how touch, used carefully and with consent, could be a grounding tool when the world went sideways. I became a teacher, she said, because there was one person like that for me when I was younger. She put a hand on my shoulder when my parents were screaming in the office and said, You're not the noise they make. That touch probably broke 100 rules. It also kept me from breaking. Her eyes swept the room. I understand why parents are afraid, she said. You've been told that predators hide in plain sight. That any closeness is a risk. But if we strip every humane gesture from classrooms, if we tell kids that no adult at school is allowed to hug them even when they're sobbing and can't breathe, we are not protecting them. We're teaching them that they're alone. She took a breath. I will follow whatever guidelines the district sets, she finished. But I will not accept being treated like a danger because I refuse to leave a child shaking on a linoleum floor. When she stepped away, the applause was louder. Less hesitant. Brielle leaned toward the woman beside her, whispering furiously. The president banged her gavel, tiny, symbolic sound, until the clapping died. Thank you, Ms. Reyes, she said. At this point, we'll move into closed session to discuss personnel matters. We ask that everyone remain available in the lobby. We appreciate your cooperation. The board members filed offstage toward a side door. The crowd exhaled collectively, conversations erupting. Cade exhaled with them. His chest hurt like he'd done a sprint. Sadie was scribbling furiously in her sketchbook. What are you drawing? He asked. She tilted it toward him. On the page, a little girl stood in front of a huge microphone, her hair a wild scribble. Beside her, a woman with a yellow scarf held a paintbrush like a sword. Between them and a faceless crowd, a man in a flannel shirt and work boots stood with his arms outstretched. There's no red line, she said. Just us. He swallowed past the ache in his throat. Before he could answer, the side door near the stage opened. A uniformed security officer stepped out, followed by the superintendent, faces grim. A murmur moved through the crowd like wind. The officer's gaze swept the room, then zeroed in on Talia. "Ms. Reyes," he called, his voice cutting through the chatter. "We need you to come with us." Cade's heart slammed against his ribs. "For what?" Talia asked, her voice level but too loud in the suddenly quiet room. The officer's hand rested near the cuff case on his belt. "Ma'am," he said, "we've received a report. We need to speak with you downtown." People leaned in, hungry for escalation. Brielle's phone was already in her hand, angled just right. Cade was on his feet before he registered moving. Sadie stood too, her fingers digging into his sleeve. He didn't remember crossing the space between the row and the aisle, only the press of bodies giving way, the sudden gulf between Talia and the officer narrowing. The officer reached out as if to take Talia's arm. Cade stepped between them, his shoulders filling the space. "Touch her and see," he growled, the words low and dangerous as a rumble of distant thunder. "Try to put your hands on her in front of half this town without telling us what you're really doing, and watch how fast this scandal dies before it ever starts." The entire room held its breath, balanced on the edge of the next second, waiting to see which way it would break. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. The entire room held its breath, balanced on the edge of the next second, waiting to see which way it would break. Cade could hear his own pulse, a thick drum in his ears. The security officer's hand hovered just a little closer to the cuff case, his gaze flickering from Cade's broad shoulders to the watching crowd. Somewhere behind him, a baby cried. Someone else muttered a curse under their breath. Talia stood very still. He could feel her there, a few inches behind his back, the way you could feel a wall even with your eyes closed. Part of him wanted to drag her out the side exit and into his truck, to keep her far from fluorescent lights and public humiliation and the sound of metal closing around wrists. Instead, he planted his feet. "Sir," the officer said slowly, tone dipping into the careful register people used for dogs they weren't sure would bite, "I'm going to need you to take a step back." "I'm going to need you to answer the question," Cade replied, matching that careful tone with one of his own. "Are you here to arrest her or scare her?" A murmur rolled through the audience. The board president hissed, "Order, please," into her microphone, but no one looked at her. The superintendent stepped forward, palms held out. "Let's all take a breath," Blake said, voice firm but calm. "Officer Daniels is here because the district received a call on the Child Protection Hotline this afternoon. When those calls mention a staff member, we are required, by law, to loop in law enforcement. Nothing more, nothing less." "So this is a box-checking exercise?" Cade asked. "Because the box looks a lot like handcuffs from where we're standing." Daniels shifted his weight. "Mr. Mercer, this is a voluntary interview downtown. Ms. Reyes is not under arrest at this time." "At this time," Cade repeated. "You hear how that sounds?" "Yes," Talia said quietly behind him. "Like a pending sentence." Her voice slipped under his skin, steadier than he felt. "Ms. Reyes," the superintendent said, addressing her directly now, "the call includes claims we have to document. If you cooperate, it will help clear this up as quickly as possible." Cade didn't miss the emphasis on if. "And if she doesn't?" he asked. "Then the investigation takes longer," Blake said. "And rumors keep spreading." The unspoken threat hung between them, "Make this easy for us, or we let you hang in the wind." Talia stepped around Cade's shoulder, moving into the aisle where everyone could see her clearly. Her face was composed, but he could see the slight tremble in her fingers as she smoothed her sweater. "I'll go," she said. "Talia," Cade started. She shook her head once. "I've got nothing to hide," she said, not taking her eyes off Daniels. "If answering questions keeps my student from getting caught in the middle any longer than she already has, I'll answer questions." "That doesn't mean you go alone," Cade said. "You can't come into the interview room," Daniels said automatically. "Is she under arrest?" Cade asked again. "No." "Then she has the right to bring an advocate," Maya said, appearing beside them like she'd been conjured from the worry pressing in around them. The counselor's voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Or at least have someone sit in the lobby who isn't waiting to see her fall. Daniels exhaled, the breath visible in the tension of his shoulders. He can wait in the lobby, he conceded. But he doesn't go in. Fine, Cade said. I can sit. He felt Talia's eyes on him then, a quick sharp glance. Something like gratitude flickered there, threaded with fear. All right, the superintendent said, clapping his hands once like he could reset the atmosphere. We're going to recess briefly while Ms. Reyes speaks with Officer Daniels. Please, everyone, remain calm. There are processes for this. Processes. Boxes to tick. Lines to walk. Cade watched Daniels angle his body, inviting Talia to walk ahead of him. She did, chin up, shoulders back, the way he imagined she walked into classrooms full of kids with scissors and glue and big feelings. He followed. As they reached the side door, a voice cut through the murmur of the auditorium. She didn't do anything wrong. Sadie's voice. Cade turned. His daughter stood on her chair, small body straight, cheeks flushed. Her sketchbook hung at her side, fingers digging into the cardboard cover. She was helping me, Sadie said, voice shaking but loud. I couldn't breathe, and she helped me breathe. The picture is a lie. Every head in the auditorium swiveled. Sadie, Cade said, throat tight. Bug, sit down. She shook her head, braids whipping. If they're going to take her, they should know they're wrong, she said. You always say truth feels like a splinter if you leave it under the skin. I don't want this one staying there. Heat pricked behind his eyes. He wanted to scoop her up, to wrap her in something thick enough to keep every gossip and half-truth out. But he also knew what it felt like to be 9 and silenced. To have adults talk around you like you were a problem to be managed, not a person. Ms. Mercer, the board president began. Sweetheart, this is complicated. No, it's not, Sadie said. Complicated as math. This is people being mean and pretending it's safety. A ripple ran through the room. Someone half laughed, half sobbed. Maya reached up and gently touched Sadie's ankle. You're very brave, she said. You've told the truth. Let your dad handle the rest, okay? Sadie's eyes locked onto Cade's. He nodded once. She stepped down slowly, sinking into her seat as if all the adrenaline had drained out at once. She curled around her sketchbook, drawing it into her lap like armor. Cade turned back toward Talia. Her face had changed. She looked like someone who'd just been handed evidence of something she'd always hoped for but never fully believed, that the kids she fought for would fight for her back. Let's go, she said to Daniels, voice steadier now. I'd like to get this over with. The police station lobby smelled like old coffee and industrial cleaner trying too hard to erase the scent of tired fear. Cade sat in a plastic chair that complained every time he shifted. A few feet away, a TV mounted on the wall played a muted news channel, headlines crawling beneath talking heads who gestured urgently at charts no one in the lobby seemed to be watching. He'd called Mrs. Patel from the parking lot. She'd taken Sadie without hesitating, telling him to go do what needs doing in a tone that brooked no argument. Now his hands hung empty. He'd always thought of himself as a man who did things with his hands, built shelves, patched holes, carried lumber. Right now they just sat there, big and useless in his lap. The double doors to the back area of the station had swung closed behind Talia 20 minutes ago. Logically, he knew these interviews were recorded. That there were rules and rights, even if he didn't know all of them. Emotionally, all he could see was a woman with paint still smudged on her cuticles sitting under harsh fluorescent lights while strangers picked apart her kindness looking for claws. He rubbed a thumb along the edge of his watch face. Jenna had given him that watch on their 5th anniversary, declaring that if she couldn't make him on time, maybe a fancy piece of gear could. The second hand ticked around and around, uselessly precise. The door beside the reception desk buzzed. Maya stepped through, cheeks pink from the cold outside. You beat me here, she said, dropping into the chair beside him. Didn't realize it was a race, he muttered. She gave him a look. You know what I mean. I finished with the board and drove straight over. How are things back at the school, he asked. Loud, she said. Messy. We broke for the night. They're going to issue a statement in the morning. Statement that says what? That there is an ongoing investigation and they can't comment on personnel matters, she said dryly. Translated, please don't sue us yet. He huffed out a humorless breath. Hey. Maya nudged his elbow with her own. You were good in there. Felt like I was swinging a hammer in a room full of glass, he said. Sometimes glass needs breaking. He studied her profile. You believe her, he said. It wasn't a question. Maya's eyes flashed. I've sat across from enough kids who flinch when an adult raises a hand, she said. Sadie doesn't flinch when she talks about Talia. She relaxes. That doesn't happen if someone's hurting you. It happens when someone's finally not. He swallowed. A small video camera sat on the edge of the reception desk, pointed toward the lobby. Cade found himself wondering how much of this discomfort would end up on some archived hard drive, labeled deeply boring. The inner door buzzed again. This time, Superintendent Blake stepped out, shrugging off his suit jacket as if the night had aged him 10 years. Behind him trailed a woman in a soft gray pantsuit with a leather portfolio under her arm. Blake spotted them inside. Mr. Mercer. Ms. Collins. Is she okay? Cade blurted. The woman in the pantsuit answered before Blake could. She's tired, she said. But she's fine. She has a good memory and a clear timeline. That always helps. You are? Maya asked. Public defender, the woman answered. Happened to be here on another matter. Caught wind that a teacher was being questioned alone in a room with 2 officers about alleged misconduct and thought that sounded like a bad idea. Thank you, Cade said, meaning it with a weight that surprised him. She shrugged. I like rules, she said. Especially the ones that say adults answering questions about kids get representation. Blake pinched the bridge of his nose. Detective Harris is still with her, he said. They're reviewing the materials that came in with the hotline report. Materials? Cade repeated. Besides the photo? Blake hesitated. Maya's eyes narrowed. What else was there? A video, he said finally. The floor seemed to tilt. What video? Cade asked. His voice sounded too flat even to his own ears. It was submitted anonymously, along with the written report, Blake said. A longer clip from the same day as the photo. It shows your daughter's panic attack in the cafeteria, Ms. Reyes walking her down the hall, the 2 of them in the art room. He swallowed bile. They filmed her while she was, his hands balled into fists. What kind of person records a kid freaking out instead of helping? An opportunistic one, the public defender said. Or a child who's been taught that everything that happens is content. Blake nodded grimly. The video also shows Ms. Reyes asking Sadie for permission before she touches her, he said. And Sadie saying yes. It shows Ms. Reyes emailing the counselor afterward from her classroom computer. Time-stamped. That's all on there too. So the same person who thought they had evidence of something dirty, Maya said slowly, actually handed you proof she followed procedure? Seems that way, Blake said. Cade stared at him. Then what are we doing here? We still have to document the report, Blake said. You'd be amazed how fast it becomes the district ignored child abuse if we don't. But yes, the full context helps. Helps? Cade repeated. If that video clears her, say that. It moves things in that direction, Blake hedged. But we still need to talk with the child who submitted it. And the one who took the original photo. Do you know who that was? Maya asked. Not yet, Blake said. Phones change hands. Kids don't always tell the truth when adults show up with notepads. We have some names. Cade thought of the glint in Mason's eyes at recess. The way he'd held the phone just out of Sadie's reach. They're not going to come forward on their own, he said. Not if they think they might get in trouble. Then we give them a reason that's scarier than a principal's office, the defender said dryly. Or we talk to parents who might be more interested in avoiding criminal charges than protecting their kid's prank. A door behind the reception desk opened. Talia stepped through with a detective at her shoulder. She looked tired now, the kind of tired that seeped into bone. But she was standing straight, shoulders back. Her eyes found Kate almost instantly. "Hey," he said, pushing up from the chair. "Hey," she echoed, and for a second something like a smile tugged at her mouth. "Seen any good rumors lately?" He huffed. "Only in 3,000 comment threads." The detective, a woman with hair cropped close and deep lines around her mouth, addressed Blake. "The video's clear," she said. "There's no sexual element. No grooming. No hidden messages. It's a panicked kid and a competent teacher." "Thank you," Talia said, the words tight. The anonymous caller framed it like part of a pattern, the detective added. "We're going to follow up on that. But based on what I just saw, we're not looking at a crime here." "Will that be enough for the board?" Maya asked. "It'll be enough for me to say no charges," the detective said. "What your board does with its fear is up to them." Kate exhaled, a sound that felt like a slow leak. Not a crime. Of course it wasn't. He'd known that from the second he saw that crumpled drawing on Holcomb's desk. But hearing someone with a badge say it out loud loosened something that had been welded tight around his ribs. "So that's it?" he asked. "It's over?" Talia let out a small, incredulous laugh. "Over," she repeated. "People saw handcuffs in their heads, Kate. They don't unsee that just because a detective doesn't file paperwork." She wasn't wrong. Blake checked his watch. "We'll reconvene with the board," he said. "We have enough to at least recommend lifting the leave." "And the kids who spread the photo?" Kate asked, his voice sharpening again. "The one who recorded my daughter having a panic attack?" "We're talking about it," Blake said. "Talk faster," Kate said. "They're sleeping fine tonight." "My kid isn't." The superintendent's shoulders sagged. "I know," he said quietly. "Believe it or not, some of us still remember what this job is supposed to be." They left the station together, the night air hitting their faces like a reset button. The parking lot was mostly empty now, pools of yellow light stretching around the handful of cars left. Somewhere a siren wailed in the distance, heading towards someone else's emergency. Kate walked Talia to her car, a battered hatchback with a cracked taillight held together by clear tape and optimism. "You need a new light," he said automatically. She looked at it, then at him. "You offering to install one?" "Labor's expensive," he said. "But I might be able to work out a single dad discount." That earned him an actual smile. It looked different on her in the sodium lamps, softer and more fragile than the ones he'd seen in the hallway at school. "It's not over," she said, as if continuing a conversation they'd been having in their heads. "You know that, right?" "Yeah," he said. "But at least you're not sitting in a cell wondering if someone's about to read you charges that belong in a different universe." She ran a hand through her hair, dislodging a small flake of dried paint he hadn't noticed before. It drifted to the asphalt. "Thank you," she said. "For what you said in there. And at the meeting. You didn't have to." "I kind of did," he said. "She's my kid." "I meant for me," she said. "Not just Sadie." The words sat between them, startling in their nakedness. He swallowed. "You're her person," he said. "When she talks about school, it's math and weird cafeteria smells and you. You get her in ways I don't. I can fix a leaking sink before it floods the kitchen. I don't always know how to fix the stuff inside her head. So when people started treating you like a threat, it felt a lot like someone standing in my living room swinging a bat at our pipes." "Our," she repeated softly. "You and Sadie." He shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. Words were easier when he was angry. "I've seen enough actual monsters," he said. "You're not one of them." Something shifted in her gaze then, some quiet recognition. "I was right about you," she said. He blinked. "About what?" "You look like trouble," she said, mouth quirking. "All flannel and power tools. But underneath you're just a dad who'd burn down the world if it meant his kids slept at night." He snorted. "My reputation is ruined." "It'll survive," she said. They stood there in the cold, words thinning out, breath making ghosts in the air. It would have been easy for the moment to stretch into something else, something he wasn't sure he was ready for and was absolutely sure he'd think about later. The line between protector and something more, between gratitude and wanting, was thinner than he'd expected. His phone buzzed in his pocket, shattering the fragile bubble. It was Mrs. Patel. He answered. "Hey. Everything okay?" "You need to get home," she said without preamble. "Now." His stomach dropped. "Is she?" "She's physically fine," Mrs. Patel said. But the board released their statement early. The kids in Sadie's group chat already saw it. And one of the parents. "Kate, someone posted the video." His fingers went numb. "What?" he rasped. "Somebody dropped it in the kids' chat," she said. And then an apparent one. "It's already been reposted 3 times. I've reported it, but you know how the internet is." Sadie saw it on her friend's phone before I could get to her. She's shaking." He closed his eyes briefly. Of course. Of course, the thing that cleared Talia in one room had been turned into ammunition in another. "I'm on my way," he said. He hung up and shoved the phone back into his pocket. "Talia," he said, the word rough. "Someone leaked the video. It's circulating." Her face went bloodless. "Sadie?" she asked. "Mrs. Patel says she saw it," he said. "I need to get to her." "Go," she said immediately. She broke off, eyes narrowing like she was making a decision. "Can I come?" He stared. "Are you sure?" "She was with me when it happened," Talia said. "She might need to hear from both of us that she didn't do anything wrong." He hesitated for half a beat, visualizing the potential fallout of walking into his building with the woman half the town had just watched on their screens. Then he thought of Sadie's face when she described feeling like her skin had turned inside out. "Get in the truck," he said. The walk up to his apartment felt longer with Talia beside him. The building was an aging brick rectangle 2 blocks off Main, paint peeling around the window frames, a faint smell of stale cigarettes woven into the stairwell no matter how many times the landlord claimed to have deep cleaned the carpets. Kate took the steps 2 at a time. His boots thudded. Talia's lighter shoes whispered on the concrete. On the second-floor landing, Mrs. Patel was waiting outside his door, cardigan wrapped tightly around her, dark hair escaping its bun. "She's inside," she said before he could ask. "I took her phone. She's mad at me, which I'll happily take over her scrolling." "Thank you," he said. The 2 words felt inadequate. Mrs. Patel's eyes slid to Talia. Something like relief moved through them. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "She asked for you." Talia's throat bobbed. "I'm glad too," she said quietly. Kate unlocked the door and stepped inside. The living room was small but clean. A sagging couch faced a thrift store TV. Sadie sat on the floor between them, back against the coffee table, knees hugged to her chest. Her sketchbook lay open and untouched beside her. She looked up as they entered. Her face was pale, eyes too wide. "They all saw," she whispered. Kate dropped his keys on the counter and crouched in front of her. "Who?" "Everyone," she said. "The boys from Mason's soccer team. Kids I don't even know. They're sending it back and forth like it's funny. They put stickers on it." Her voice cracked on the last word. Talia knelt slowly beside Kate, leaving a careful inch of space. "They put stickers on it?" she asked gently. Sadie nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "Like puking faces and hearts and gross stuff." They wrote captions. Every muscle in Kate's body tensed. "What kind of captions?" he asked, even though part of him wanted to walk back out, get in his truck, and go find every kid with a phone and a Wi-Fi connection. Stuff like Miss R and her secret girlfriend, Sadie said, choking on the last word. And caught in 4K. They slow-motioned the hug and looped it. Talia's breath hitched beside him. Sadie, she said softly. Look at me. Sadie did, reluctantly, like looking up meant stepping into a spotlight. In the video, Talia said, speaking slowly, what do you see? Me, Sadie said. Freaking out. And you? And what am I doing? Helping me, Sadie whispered. Right, Talia said. That's the true thing. Not the stickers. Not the captions. Not what people decide to think when they're bored and mean. The true thing didn't change just because they slapped garbage over it. But now when people think about it, they'll think of the garbage, Sadie said. They won't see the breathing. Just the hug. Cade's chest hurt. He remembered something one of Jenna's therapists had said once, in a room that smelled like peppermint tea and stale cigarettes, trauma is not just what happens to you. It's what happens inside you as you try to make sense of it. Sadie was trying to make sense of being turned into content. That video never should have been shared, he said. What those kids did wasn't just rude. It was wrong. And illegal, if any grown-ups feel like getting off their butts long enough to say so. Sadie's mouth trembled. Can they take it back? No, Talia said softly. Once something's out there, it's like glitter. It gets into everything. But we can decide what parts of it we carry. He looked at her. You're allowed to block people, too, Talia added. To log off, mute threads, leave group chats. You're allowed to say, I don't want to see this. She tried, Mrs. Patel said from the doorway. Her friend shoved the phone at her before I could intercept. I don't want to go back, Sadie whispered suddenly. To school. Everyone's going to look at me like I'm gross. A blade of panic slid between Cade's ribs. Not going back wasn't an option. He couldn't homeschool. He could barely get her to do dishes without turning it into a negotiation. But the idea of sending her into hallways where her worst moment was a punchline made his skin crawl. You are not gross, he said. You're a kid who had a hard moment and a teacher who helped you. They're the ones acting gross. That's not how it feels, she said. He knew that tone. It was the sound of logic bouncing off a wall of shame. What if, he trailed off, catching Talia's eye. She seemed to understand the half-formed thought. What if you didn't have to be the one whispering, she said softly to Sadie. What if we told the truth louder than they tell the lie? Sadie frowned. How? Tomorrow, Talia said, the board is going to send out a statement. Something boring about procedures and investigations. They'll try not to say my name. But everyone will know. If you want, and only if you want, you and I, and your dad if he's willing, can tell our side. In words. Not just a video someone stole. We can write it down. Or record it. Or speak in an assembly. Or all three. You want to go public? Kate asked slowly. The idea made his skin itch. He'd already stood at one microphone tonight. The thought of another made his stomach flip. But he also knew what happened when only one side of a story got told. I don't want to, Talia said honestly. I'd like to crawl under my bed with my sketchbook and hide until June. But if the picture's already out there, maybe we can change what people see when they look at it. Sadie sniffed. You always say art can change how people see things. Exactly, Talia said. We can't unpaint the picture. But maybe we can add more to the canvas. Silence settled in the small living room. Cade listened to the building's pipes groan, to a distant TV through the wall playing a laugh track that didn't quite match the jokes. Truth louder than the lie. It sounded exhausting. It also sounded like the only way forward that didn't involve hiding. Bug, he said. Do you want to say something? You don't owe anyone anything. But if you do, I'll be right there next to you. Sadie wiped her nose on the sleeve of her hoodie. Will they listen? Some won't, he said honestly. Some have already decided what makes them feel safe and they're going to cling to that. But some might. And maybe the kids who took the video will see your face and hear your voice and remember you're a person, not a joke. She chewed on her lower lip. Can we draw it first? She asked. Draw what? Talia said. How I want it to look in my head, Sadie said. Then maybe the words will feel less naked. Kate exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said. We can do that. They stayed up later than they should have, the three of them hunched around the coffee table. Sadie drew in thick strokes, the scratch of colored pencils filling the spaces where words ran out. This time, she sketched herself twice, once curled small under a table, sound waves drawn like jagged knives around her, and once standing upright next to Talia, both of them holding a long paint roller. What's that? Kate asked, nodding at the roller. Us, Sadie said. Painting over the captions. He swallowed against the tightness in his throat. The next morning, the district's email hit inboxes at 7:06 a.m. Dear East Ridge families. We are writing to address concerns regarding a staff member and student interaction that occurred yesterday. The message was 3 paragraphs of cautious language. It confirmed that a report had been made, that law enforcement had been involved, and that no criminal activity had been found. It mentioned mandated reporting and student privacy. It never used Talia's name. It ended with a vague promise to continue reviewing our policies on appropriate boundaries. Within 20 minutes, Brielle had posted a screenshot to the parents group. Some of us still have questions. Comments flooded in. At 8:03 a.m., Cade posted something of his own. A photo. Not the one everyone had been passing around. His. Sadie's drawing lay on the coffee table, the paint roller stretching over cartoon speech bubbles filled with scribbled-out words. Under it, in his shaky block letters, he'd written, Truth Rumors. His caption was short. This is my daughter. This is her teacher. This is what actually happened. We'll be sharing more later. If you've shared the video, please delete it. If you haven't, please don't. He waited. Notifications blew up. Some parents commented with hearts and thank you for speaking up. Others doubled down. Boundaries matter. The video speaks for itself. You can't blame kids for being confused when teachers act like friends. I'm sorry your daughter is going through this, but that doesn't mean we ignore potential red flags. Cade didn't answer them. He had another microphone to prepare for. The school's multipurpose room had been rearranged overnight. Gone were the folding tables and craft supplies usually set up for aftercare. In their place stood rows of chairs facing a portable stage borrowed from the high school, a lectern perched on top like a flimsy guardrail against chaos. By 10 a.m., the space buzzed with the low roar of bodies. Parents, teachers, a sprinkling of older students the high school had bussed over for the digital citizenship assembly. Sadie sat in the front row between Cade and Talia, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. Maya hovered nearby with a clipboard, eyes scanning the room for signs of eruption. This feels like a trial, Cade muttered. It's supposed to be an educational forum, Maya said. Panel discussion. Sharing feelings. Same thing, Talia murmured. The superintendent stepped up first, trotting out a short speech about the dangers of social media misuse, privacy violations, and the importance of context. He referenced a recent incident in our own community without names. Then he gestured to the side of the stage. Ms. Reyes has asked to speak, he said. Along with one of our students and her parent. We've agreed, as we believe real stories can teach better than hypothetical ones. Maya touched Sadie's shoulder. You can change your mind, she whispered. Even now. Sadie shook her head. I drew the roller, she said. I want to use it. Her legs trembled as she climbed the 3 shallow steps to the stage. Cade followed behind her, feeling like his heart had moved to his throat. Talia came last, her scarf wrapped tight, colors like a sunset someone had almost convinced to fade. They stood together behind the lectern. The microphone loomed larger than the one at the board meeting. Talia adjusted it down to Sadie's height. "You want to go first?" she asked softly. Sadie licked her lips. "Can we do it together?" Talia's hand brushed her forearm, a brief, grounding touch. "Always," she said. Cade stepped to the side, close enough to touch them both if he needed to. His presence felt both too large and not nearly enough. Sadie's voice when it came was small but clear. "My name is Sadie Mercer," she said. "I'm in 4th grade. Some of you know me. Some of you just know the video." A ripple of uncomfortable shifting moved through the crowd. "I had a panic attack," she said. "The fire alarm went off and my brain went weird. I couldn't breathe right. My chest hurt. I thought I was going to die." She swallowed. "Miss Reyes helped me," she continued. "She asked if she could hug me before she did. She asked if I wanted to go to a quiet room. She let me draw the alarm with googly eyes and that made it less scary. That's all that was happening in the video. No secret grossness. No girlfriend stuff. Just breathing and drawing." She glanced over at Talia. "Somebody filmed it without asking me," Sadie said. "They put words and stickers on it to make it into something it wasn't. That made me feel dirty. Like I'd done something wrong by needing help." Her eyes scanned the front rows, where a cluster of boys slouched. Mason was among them, traces of a smirk still fighting for space on his face. "I didn't do anything wrong," Sadie said, and this time her voice didn't shake. "Needing help isn't wrong. Being kind isn't wrong. Taking someone's worst moment and turning it into a joke is." Silence. Talia stepped forward then, not to the microphone but slightly behind Sadie, where everyone could see her and also see that she wasn't hiding. "When the district told me about the photo and the video," she said, voice steady, "they used words like optics and implications. But before any of that, I was thinking about this face." She nodded toward Sadie. "The face of a kid who has had a hard couple of years and found one room in this building where she can turn the noise into pictures." Her gaze swept the crowd. "I will follow whatever boundaries this district sets," she said. "I will ask consent, document everything, file forms until my keyboard gives up. But I will not let fear turn our classrooms into places where kids are alone with their panic." She exhaled slowly. "If you watched that video," she said, "I understand if your first response was fear. We live in a world where terrible things have happened in schools, and we are trained to see danger. But I'm asking you to also see context. To see the whole clip, not just the screenshot. To listen to the people actually in the room." She glanced at Cade then. He stepped up, gripping the sides of the lectern as if it were the edge of a roof. "I'm Sadie's dad," he said. "Some of you know me as the guy who fixes your cabinet doors." A few reluctant chuckles rippled. "When I saw the picture, my stomach dropped," he said. "Because I know what people can do with a half-second image. But then I thought about what would have happened if no one had been there. If my kid had curled up on that cafeteria floor and no adult had stepped in because they were afraid someone might misunderstand later." He let that sink in. "We say we want kids to ask for help," he said. "If we punish the adults who answer that call, we're lying to them." He felt Sadie's shoulder brush his elbow. "So here's what we're asking," he said. "If you shared the video, delete it. If your kid did, talk to them about why that matters. Not because I want revenge. Because I'd like to live in a town where the next time a kid has a hard moment, they aren't thinking about who might be filming." His voice roughened. "And if you still have questions," he added, "you can ask me. Face to face. I'll answer. But don't pretend you're protecting my daughter by ripping away the one person who helped her breathe." He stepped back. For a long heartbeat, no one moved. Then, from the second row, a tall boy stood up. He was maybe 12, with a mop of hair perpetually falling into his eyes. Cade recognized him vaguely from the complex, Mrs. Patel's neighbor across the hall. "I took the video," the boy blurted. All heads swiveled. "Theo," Mrs. Patel hissed. Sit down. No, he said, voice cracking. I did it. I thought it was funny. Like catching the teacher doing something sus. Mason told me to send it. He said it would get me into the group. He cropped it and put the stickers on. I sent it to 2 people. I didn't know it would go everywhere. He looked at Sadie, cheeks burning. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't think about you. Just about looking cool. Sadie's jaw clenched. Her small hands balled into fists. That doesn't make it okay, she said. But, thanks for saying it. The room shifted. Everyone was seeing something rare, a kid stepping into blame without a lawyer or a PR statement smoothing the edges. At the back of the room, Brielle stood up abruptly. Theo, don't say another word, she snapped. He flinched. Kate's brain caught up. Theo. Hanlon. She'd never mentioned her son's name online. Of course. Mrs. Hanlon, the superintendent said carefully into his mic, maybe this is a good opportunity to talk about parental responsibility. Her cheeks flushed an angry red. My son is a child, she said. He made a mistake. The real issue is that a grown woman put herself in a situation where that mistake was possible. Murmurs rose. Talia's shoulders went rigid. Maya stepped forward, taking the mic from the stand completely. Mrs. Hanlon, she said, tone calm but edged with steel, your son just demonstrated more accountability than most adults I've seen on the internet this week. Maybe we could follow his lead. The gym went very, very quiet. The superintendent cleared his throat. We'll be meeting with the families involved to discuss consequences, he said. Digital citizenship isn't just a buzzword. It's a responsibility. We're considering this a serious case of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying. The word landed with more weight than most of the bureaucratic jargon that had floated through the last 24 hours. It seems clear, Blake continued, glancing at the detective seated along the wall, that Ms. Reyes did not engage in misconduct. The district's investigation is closed. She'll be returning to her classroom Monday. A mix of reactions met that. Relief. Applause. A few tight-lipped frowns. Brielle's jaw clenched so hard Kate thought she might crack a tooth. It didn't matter. The words had been said into a microphone. The scandal, the one that had been flickering at the edges of their lives, waiting for a gust of sensationalism to turn it into a blaze, guttered. It didn't get to grow into a headline, or a news truck parked outside the school. It died right there on the multipurpose room floor, smothered by context and a 4th grader's raw honesty. In the days that followed, life didn't return to normal. It shifted into something else. Some parents sent emails to Talia with subject lines like "Thank you" and "I'm sorry." Others pulled their kids from her elective without explanation. The kids tracked the weather of adult opinion the way kids always did, quietly, with more accuracy than anyone gave them credit for. Sadie had moments where she seemed fine, laughing at memes, arguing about cereal choices, begging for 10 more minutes past bedtime. Then a notification would ping on someone's phone at the bus stop and her shoulders would climb toward her ears. The video didn't vanish. Copies lingered, buried in group chats and cloud backups. But it stopped being currency. When someone tried to resurrect it in the lunchroom one afternoon, another kid, Theo this time, told them to knock it off. "That's my mess," he said. "I'm not making it bigger." Cade watched it all with a combination of pride and helpless fury. He couldn't punch the internet. He couldn't sand down the jagged edges of every phone in town. But he could do this. He could show up. He could ask questions when the district quietly drafted a new physical contact policy that would have banned even high fives without verbal consent. This is going to make teachers afraid to pat a kid on the back for a job well done, he pointed out at the next board meeting. Fear-based policies don't keep kids safe. They keep them isolated. He could volunteer to help repair the art room's broken cabinets, lingering afterward to listen to kids chatter about projects instead of rumors. He could sit with Sadie when she woke up sweating from dreams where everyone at school had eyes like phone cameras. What if the next teacher isn't like her, she whispered one night, curled against his side on the couch, some grainy late-night show flickering unnoticed on the TV. What if they're scared to help? Then we find them a different job, he said. Or we remind them that kindness is worth the risk. You can't fire teachers, she said, yawning. Watch me, he said. She snorted, drifting off. He looked over at the end table. Talia's new mug sat there, a bright ceramic thing Sadie had picked out with the words world-class art nerd painted in wobbly letters. She'd begun leaving it at their place some afternoons, grating on the couch while Sadie worked on her own sketches. The first time Talia had stayed for dinner, Kate had nearly burned the chicken. Conversation had felt like walking a tightrope, too serious and he'd drown them in heaviness, too flippant and it would feel like betrayal of everything they'd just survived. Over time, the rope widened into a path. They talked about movies Sadie hadn't seen yet and lessons she'd learned from kids with glue in their hair. About Kate's jobs fixing old houses that groaned with secrets in their floorboards. About Jenna, carefully, in fragments. I don't want to make you into a tragedy, Talia had said one night after Sadie had fallen asleep in a nest of blankets. Or her, either. She wasn't just one, he'd said. She was also the person who taught Sadie the word juxtaposition before she could spell dog. Talia had smiled. That explains a lot. Sometimes, when Sadie wandered off to her room mid-conversation, he and Talia would fall into a temporary silence. There was something there. Something that hummed under the everyday details of permission slips and hardware store runs. He didn't know what to do with it. He'd made vows once. Fulfilled them in some ways, failed in others. The idea of building something new on top of old fault lines scared him more than board meetings ever could. And yet, when she laughed, really laughed, the tightness behind his eyes eased in a way he hadn't realized was possible anymore. When she reached for Sadie's hand in crowded hallways, some brittle part of him unclenched. We're painting over the captions, he reminded himself. That didn't just apply to the video. It applied to whatever story he'd been telling himself about deserving a quiet life, about not rocking boats. Because the truth was, the boat was already rocking. The world had proven itself more than willing to tip. Maybe the point wasn't to sit still and hope it didn't. Maybe the point was to move with it. On a Wednesday evening 2 months after the assembly, Kate was sanding cabinet doors in his kitchen when someone knocked. He glanced at the clock. 8:47 p.m. Sadie was at a sleepover down the hall at Mrs. Patel's, their apartment full of glitter and popcorn and squeaky laughter. He had the place to himself for the first time in weeks. The knock came again, lighter this time. He wiped his hands on a rag and opened the door. Talia stood in the hallway, a manila envelope clutched to her chest. Hey, he said, surprised into informality. Did I forget we were supposed to watch Sadie's weird slime show? She shook her head. Her hair was down, curling around her face in dark waves. She wore a worn denim jacket over a dress he'd seen once before at a winter concert, when she'd stood in the back row and swayed almost imperceptibly to the music. Can I come in? She asked. His heart did that stupid stutter it had started doing lately when she was near. Yeah, he said, stepping aside. She slipped past him, the envelope brushing his arm. The apartment suddenly felt smaller. Sanding party, she asked, nodding toward the propped cabinet doors. Something like that, he said. Figured I'd make good on the landlord's vague threats about normal wear and tear before he invents a reason to keep our deposit. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. What's up? He asked, leaning against the counter. She looked down at the envelope, then back up. I got a job offer, she said. The words dropped into the space between them like a stone into water. Oh, he said. In another district, she added. Bigger. More resources. They want to build out a whole trauma-informed arts program. They saw the clip from the assembly somehow. They called it innovative. He let out a breath that was half laugh, half something else. Of course they did, he said. They're offering more money, she said. Stability. Less. Brielle energy. That last part might be worth the move by itself, he said. Maybe, she said. The envelope crinkled under her fingers. How long have you known? He asked. They sent it last week, she said. I've been thinking. About whether I can keep doing this here, she said, voice cracking on the last word. Every time I walk down the hall, I feel eyes on my back. Most of the kids are fine. Amazing, even. But there's always one parent at pickup giving me that look. The one that says, "We're watching you." He knew that look. He'd seen it aimed at people like him his whole life. At men with tattoos and rough hands and pasts that didn't fit into polite dinner talk. I don't want to spend the next 10 years waiting for the next phone call, she said. The next screenshot. The next whisper. He nodded slowly. I don't want that for you either, he said. I also don't want to leave my kids, she said. Sadie. The others. The ones who found their breath in that room. The idea of walking away from them when the dust still hasn't fully settled makes me feel like I'm letting the rumor win. Her eyes shone. I thought I knew what kind of fight I signed up for when I became a teacher, she said. Budget cuts. Standardized tests. Kids who hated art until they loved it. I didn't realize I was signing up to defend my existence every time I touched a shoulder. He swallowed. What does Sadie think? He asked. I haven't told her, she said. Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. The room hummed with the weight of that. Me, he said. You're her anchor, she said simply. If I leave, you'll be the one catching the fallout. If I stay, you'll be the one standing next to me when the next storm hits. Either way, this decision doesn't just land on me. He pushed a hand through his hair, leaving a faint dusting of sawdust in his wake. I don't have the right to tell you where to live your life, he said. Or where to teach. That's not what I'm asking, she said softly. I'm asking what you want. Not just for Sadie. For you. The question reached into places he'd kept carefully boarded up. What did he want? He'd built his life around what needed to be done. Bills paid, lunches packed, shoes replaced when toes poked through. One had felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. He looked at her. At the woman who had sat on the floor with his daughter while the world spun. Who had walked into a police station alone because she believed his kid deserved protection. Who had stood next to him on a stage and refused to let fear rewrite their story. He wanted. He wasn't sure he had a word big enough. But he knew this. He didn't want to lose another person Sadie trusted to the fallout of other people's fear. He also didn't want to chain Talia to a town that had already shown its teeth. He exhaled, every option tasting like loss. If you stay, he said slowly, we'll keep fighting. Together. I can't promise it'll be easy. I can promise you won't be doing it alone. Her eyes flickered. And if I go? She asked. He swallowed hard. If you go, he said, I'll tell Sadie you're doing what you tell her to do in her drawings, putting yourself somewhere you can breathe. I'll be mad at the situation. I'll probably hate the new district on principle for a while. But I'll pack boxes and help you load your car. I'll still answer your texts when you send me pictures of your new classroom. He forced a crooked smile. And I'll drive her to visit when she's old enough to roll her eyes at road trips, he added. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. That's a very adult answer, she said. I'm trying a new thing, he said. It's called not making everything about my ego. She huffed out a wet laugh. He took a breath. What I want, he said finally, the words scraping on their way out, is for you to choose the option that feels less like you're cutting off pieces of yourself to make other people comfortable. If that's here, I'll fight for you to keep your job without having to flinch every time a parent raises their phone. If it's there, I'll help you leave without making you feel like you abandoned us. Us. The word hung between them. Her fingers tightened on the envelope. Us, she echoed. He met her eyes. Yeah, he said. Us. She looked down at the envelope again, then set it on the counter between them. I have to give them an answer by Friday, she said. Whatever I choose, it changes things. He nodded. I know, he said. A beat of silence. Can I be selfish for 1 second? She asked. He hesitated, then nodded. Be the most selfish. She stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the faint constellation of paint flecks on her forearm, the tiny scar near her jaw where some childhood mishap had left its mark. Close enough that he forgot how to inhale properly. If I stay, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, it won't just be for the kids. His pulse stumbled. And if I go, she continued, it won't just be because I'm scared. I need you to know that. Or I'll take this job and spend the whole time wondering if I ran from something instead of toward it. He searched her face. Talia, he said. Her name felt like a question and an answer all at once. The air between them tightened, humming with possibility and the sharp ache of maybe. She opened her mouth. Before she could speak, Kate's phone buzzed violently on the counter, skittering against the manila envelope. They both jumped. He snatched it up, adrenaline still riding high enough that even a ringtone felt like a threat. The caller ID made his gut clench. Holcomb. He thumbed it on. Principal, he said, voice rough. Kind of late for school business, isn't it? Her tone was clipped, brittle. Mr. Mercer, I apologize for calling at this hour, but something's come up. We have a situation. It involves Sadie. Every nerve in his body lit. What kind of situation? He demanded. There was an incident at the sleepover, Holcomb said. One of the girls shared an old screenshot. Sadie reacted strongly. Mrs. Patel called emergency services as a precaution. She's at the ER. They're asking for a parent. The room narrowed to a tunnel. Kate's free hand gripped the counter so hard his knuckles blanched. Is she hurt? He forced out. She's conscious, Holcomb said. But they're concerned about her emotional state. Mr. Mercer, they're using words like self-harm risk. The phone might as well have turned to ice in his hand. He could hear Talia's sharp inhale across the small space. You need to get down here, Holcomb finished. Now. The line clicked dead. Kate stood frozen for a half-second that felt like forever. Then he grabbed his keys. Talia was already moving toward the door. They didn't speak. There would be time later, for choices, for envelopes, for whatever was humming between them. Right now there was only one thing that mattered. His little girl was in a hospital somewhere, surrounded by strangers using words he'd never wanted anywhere near her name. The scandal might have died before it became a headline. But the fallout had found a new way to crack open. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.